Up in Far Harbor, on Cranberry Island, we have the remains of a journal once owned by a young girl named Eliza Gibbons. These notes, all together, tell the story of Eliza and her family in the months before the bombs dropped. She talks about the declining relationship of her family, and the death of her grandmother, and the stress and arguments between her and her brother, Nathaniel Gibbons, and the arguments between her father and her other brother, Stephen. Eliza tells the story of her family as the sole survivor makes their way across Cranberry Island. And the more we explore, the more realizations we make, and the more we understand the Gibbons. And finally, once we reach the end of the story and the bunker that most of the Gibbons family died in, and a drawing. Now, this drawing crosses out who we could assume to be one of Eliza's brother, Nathaniel Stephen. Something I think is interesting is a small crossbones next to the crossed out figure. And it makes me wonder if Eliza did this because he had died, not just someone she doesn't like because of his bullying. I assume that it's likely Nathan, as he is missing from the rest of the family in the bunker, but so is Eliza. It makes me question if the family had initially survived the fallout. Could the family survived and then ghoulified, where Eliza survived and Nathan was killed by something else? I honestly don't think it's true, as if the family had survived and Eliza was in the bunker, they all would have left and would have gotten the supplies that Nathaniel had left in the storage shed, rather than leaving it all there. But regardless, I think it's an interesting theory. Of course, the more likely reason Eliza isn't in the bunker was because she was with her friends at the Halloween party, and the picture was just left inside before the bombs dropped and the bunker was closed. Eliza truly did cross out her brother's face and drew little crossbones because she was a little kid, annoyed with her older brother. But I still think it's interesting. Not just what happened before, but after. Did Eliza survive while her family was just killed? Or did the bombs kill everyone immediately? Despite the fact these characters are simply code, I can't help being curious, because Bethesda intentionally put the Gibbons family into the Far Harbor DLC, and I'll always wonder why. But, moving on, I think it's an interesting move by Bethesda to have this perspective from a younger child, because it's a much more limited perspective than we get from most other Forgotten NPCs. Everything we get from the story is told through short journal entries and a few childish drawings. One, her family, and the other, a map of Cranberry Island and Eliza's home. From reading the journal entries, I suppose that the Gibbons family is doing what they can to prepare for nuclear war, as seen with what Eliza writes in journal entry number 3. Dad and Stephen were yelling at each other when they came home from morning chores. I do not know why, but I did hear Dad tell him that if he doesn't keep the pumps running, it'll mean more than just the pipe shutting down. I wish Stephen would just do his chores. I hate it when they fight. This could just be referencing work on the Gibbons farm. The whole family works there after all, so it makes sense. But it's the line, it means more than just the pipe shutting down. It makes me think that it's something else. Maybe the chores Stephen doesn't want to do is building and working on the bunker on the farm, and ensuring that I'll be up and working at a moment's notice if the time ever comes. I know I've been saying this a lot, and I'll keep saying it, but I love this addition, as it gives us a child's perspective on what was going on before the fallout. This perspective tells us so much despite the fact that we get so little. I think the stress that the family was clearly feeling only adds on to this. Of course, a lot of the stress could be due to the failing health and mind of Patrick, Eliza's grandfather, but I take this stress to be the obvious answer. Again, Eliza is an unreliable narrator. We can't take everything she says as true fact, just as we can't take everything from the Grantchester tour to be true. And because of that, I believe this whole prepping for the bunker theory. We've already seen others in this series that have built bunkers because of their fear of their safety and of their family. And I really think these chores are preparing for the bunker. This would just make more sense to me too, as Stephen not wanting to do his chores may not just be teenage rebellion, but fighting back against the idea that his world could end so quickly and suddenly. Could you really blame a teenager for that? It would be absolutely terrifying, having to prepare for nuclear apocalypse at such a young age. It's not just finishing high school and working on college applications, working on your family's farm, but the chance they could lose it all. The Gibbons' other son, Nathaniel, rebels in another way. His grandfather claims that he's messing with the machinery on the farm. He bullies Eliza, and in a later journal entry, she mentions that he's always disappearing. We don't see anything from Nathaniel's perspective, so it's difficult to say if this was teenage rebellion or fear of the world's political climate and lashing out because of it. But I still think it's something important to think about. It's really interesting to me that Bethesda almost shows all 3 emotions of the children, because it gives us so much insight on how children reacted to the idea of nuclear war and apocalypse. But even with the family prepping the bunker, they still move on with their everyday lives, so to speak. They work on chores of the farm, they go to Halloween parties, and make sure Grandpa's will is set in stone. It's a strange contrast, but it shows that while people were worried about nuclear war and the fallout from it, they couldn't just doomsday prep for it 24/7. They had to go on living their daily lives while living in a world of constant fear and paranoia. Like we talked about in an earlier episode, there was so much propaganda and fear spreading through pre-war Boston within the Fallout 4 world. And this contrast, I think, really helps. For one, why build a bunker like this if you're not panicked? But it also shows just how hidden and accepted this fear was. The fear that's something that people just accepted. Conversations like, hey, the world might end, let's sign up for a vault, or let's build our own bunker, are conversations that these pre-war characters had to face and had to discuss. And to be honest, I find it horrifying, but that's why Bethesda added it in, isn't it? Another interesting thing that Bethesda adds in Eliza's journal is mentioning that her grandfather's blaming of the government for trying to take away the farm. While this could just be the health of a failing elderly man, I think it could be more. As we've seen in Boston Far Harbor, there's a number of signs that the government is taking over, as Patrick Gibbons claims. For one, the Boston Rationing Center. While total speculation, it would be interesting, as a farm owner, if Patrick gave food to the Boston Rationing Centers, or was affected by the Boston Rationing Centers in some way. Then there's also the nucleus, something Patrick likely could have seen and grew nervous over, especially if there was a large military presence growing because of it. Additionally, there was likely a large number of people unknown to the islands who were there to help build Vault 118. With all this, I think it's possible that Patrick saw this and grew nervous. That, or just his failing health. Or it could be a combination of both. And everything he saw in his daily life took a hold in his mind as he grew more and more sick. But I bring it up because it just shows how much the government and Vault-Tec are spread out, how much control they had over America. It's an interesting thing to bring up because while we know today what the government and Vault-Tec were doing, it implies that the people who would have been seen as crazy at the time, such as Patrick and Wayne, took a vigilant notice of this and had a reason for it. As I mentioned earlier with the unreliable narrator, I really like this choice on Bethesda's part. Because unlike most other narrators and Forgotten NPCs that we see, it's a young child, one still learning how to properly spell, and likely doesn't have access to technology such as holotapes. Everything we know from Eliza is what she tells us, and everything she writes specifically to herself, so she doesn't add intricate details like others might for context for whoever the note is for, or talk to someone like they're close to and add in more. This choice makes the Gibbons story so interesting to me. So much is left to interpretation and our own theories and headcanons about what happened to Eliza Gibbons and the rest of the Gibbons family before and after the bombs dropped. And I enjoy that Fallout 4 gives us so much creativity with that. It's what I really enjoy about the abilities within storytelling in video games. We can get all the clues and pieces that we can find, but sometimes we'll never be able to solve a full puzzle. We'll have to find and figure things out first, and one that I enjoy exploring while playing Fallout 4. And with that, episode 5 is complete, and so is this little experimentation. I hope you enjoyed the video and the analysis with it. And this was truly fun to do because it felt like Eliza really was a Forgotten NPC. Doing research for this video was difficult because there really wasn't a lot to begin with beyond Osborne's video and the Wikipedia website. But anyways, I hope you had fun learning about the Gibbons family as much as I had fun making it.